Okay. Welcome to the Cumberland Planning Board meeting for March 15th, 2022. I'll call the meeting to order, and we have all 7 members here, including 2 new members. Peter Bingham, returning, has been on this board before, and a new member, Bridget Perry. Welcome. Did you guys want to say a few words, introduce yourself or anything?
No.
Nope. Bridget?
I guess just real quick, my name is Bridget Perry. Been in Cumberland about 2 years, and my professional background is in GIS and mapping. And I have, on the personal side, 2 young kids in the school system, and I am happy to be here learning from these wise folks up here.
I guess I should I am Peter Bingham. Just some of the folks out in television land, and this is my kind of 3rd rodeo on the planning board, and I also, I'm currently on the school board, but just fortunately until June 30th. And I always said to Steve Moriarty, one of the smartest things that he ever did in his political career was never run for the school board. And also, I've done a couple times around the town council, so I'm really pleased to be on this because I know the town is going to be taking some steps as a result of the survey of where we're going, and I would be delighted to be a part of that process, so thank you.
Peter, those school board comments are downright offensive.
I know. If I had a nickel for all the offenses I've caused this year, I would be living in Tahiti with somebody half my age.
Okay, so moving on, item C, election of vice chair. So I will turn it over to the board for comments, motions. Anybody interested in doing that job?
I will make a motion, or excuse me, I will nominate Peter Bingham.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? All opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. Very good. So next item, D, approval of minutes from February 15th, 2022. I had no comments other than the letter that I signed as a recommendation to the town council. How does that get entered into the public record? Is it part of the meeting for the town council?
Well, it's typically a notice of decision that Christina prepares. It's based on the decision and the findings of fact. And in this case, I think we did give our board that note, but we spelled out exactly what they recommended. It was more detailed notice of decision than we had. I got exactly what the board wanted them to know.
Okay. All right, anyone else?
I will make a motion that we adopt the minutes as written.
Hear a second? Second. Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed and abstained? 601. Okay. So there were no staff site plan approvals, and there were no minor change approvals. So we'll move on to section G, hearings and presentations. And before we get to item 1, Josh, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just need to disclose that I am working with CVM Mahar on a matter that is wholly unrelated to this project, and I don't believe it will have any effect on my consideration or review of this project. And for that reason, I don't believe I need to recuse myself, but I will obviously do so at the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, we should vote. I move that we approve Josh participating in this agenda item.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Unanimous, or almost unanimous.
One abstain.
Okay, so moving on to item 1 in this section, a public hearing for an amendment to an approved subdivision, now The Mark at Cumberland Foreside, formerly Broad Cove Ridge Apartments, located at 102 US Route 1, Tax Assessor Map R01, Lot 13B, to change the number of units to 42 condos, to reduce the number of parking lot spaces to 82, and to make adjustments to the natural gas service. Applicant owner is Cumberland Foresight Partners, Representative Dan Diffin. Before we get to Dan, Carla, do you want to give us a synopsis? I've seen the packet. Are there any remaining items that are still open that weren't sort of covered in Dan's latest update?
I think Dan covered all the very important ones, and then any of the minor things I think are captured in the proposed conditions of approval that will be read through at the end.
So the assumption at this point is that we'd keep the same waivers in place that, because this is an approved subdivision from before, keep the same waivers and keep the same findings of fact, right?
Yes, it seemed, Dan, that you had one other waiver about street furniture or something like that. Am I recalling that correctly? No?
No, I think those, had a question about that. I think those are the ones that we originally approved,
Okay.
way back before it was even Broad Cove, whatever it was originally. And I believe we've done two amendments,
Amendments, yeah.
and I believe they've traveled. So that was going to be my question. I think Dan had some more waiver requests in this one, or I guess, but I believe they're all the same, and I think the waivers would travel.
So
That was a question. Do we need to redo waivers or not?
to me, it looked kind of straightforward, the amendments, and that they were within the ordinance. My biggest concern, I guess, is the look of the building now and meeting Route 1 design standards. So I guess, Dan, take us through everything that you can.
Yeah, sure. Dan Diffin, CV Maher Engineers, for new faces on the board who might not know me. I am here tonight with representatives from Mark Mueller Architects as well, who can speak to some of your architectural questions, Mark Mueller and Evan Demers, as well as some of the folks from the ownership, Greg Schimberg, Mark McClure, and Ronnie Goddard. Yeah, so a whole crew, if you have any specific questions. I'll take you through sort of what's changed on the site plan, again, very minor and straightforward, so I won't spend much time, and then Mark Mueller will come up and speak to some of the architectural questions. You've seen the site 3 or 4 times. If some of those of you who haven't, please certainly stop me if you have any specific questions. The change from the previous approval as Broad Cove condominiums for this project is that we're now proposing 42 units instead of 50 units. We've gone through quite a comprehensive final design process for the building, which has shaped how many units work inside the building with the type of units that are being created. It's also shaped sort of the finish of the building in terms of what fits with the proposed use versus what fits with the proposed budget. So as a result of that, we got down to 42 units. It allowed us to decrease some of the parking on site so that we could add some green space. So we got rid of another 8 spaces. We are still keeping 2 spaces per unit because we knew at the time we came, originally the board was concerned about having somewhere around a 2-to-1 ratio instead of the required 1.5-to-1 ratio. And then nothing else has really changed. So from the site plan perspective, and it's a little hard to see, but I'll zoom in, or not. Essentially, we removed 4 spaces from this area here. We removed a space from over here, and then we removed some of the interior spaces. So we're down to 82 spaces instead of the 90. There were some utility connection changes, but nothing that fundamentally changed the site design for the project. So with that, as you mentioned, there were some questions on the look of the building, which should be on this page here. Let me try to reopen. Here we go. At this point, I'll let Mr. Mueller come up and speak to some of the architectural finishes that are proposed with the building now.
Before he begins, I just wanted to let the board know that Bill Shane went and scanned the original design, which is this, and we can display it whenever the board would like.
Great, thank you.
Well, greetings, everybody. My name is Mark Mueller. With me tonight is Evan Demers. We are architects in Portland. We feel very fortunate to be a part of this project. As Dan had mentioned, we really have worked hard to keep the site plan that was permitted intact. So much so that we didn't change any of the grading and the contours. All the doors in the building are all at different heights. There's really nothing simple about this project. But again, we kept all the elevations and we worked with that. So the interior of the building is really what's dictating a lot. Dan had mentioned that there's fewer units. I guess one thing that there's no longer any 3-bedroom units in the building. Predominantly 2 bedrooms and 11 1-bedrooms. Again, I think it's, for younger families, young professionals is who the building owners are looking to kind of, work towards. Interior, we've sort of opened up the floor plans. They are open living. There's fireplaces. Just really trying to take the spaces that we have and open them up and make them as really as nice as possible. The building is sort of a transitional exterior. It was sort of talked about as a group. Again, we've used all traditional materials. There's really nothing in the building that's modern. Maybe we've used a couple window patterns that are a little bit unusual, but again, the windows are all traditional windows that you would find in somebody's house that are put into this composition. The building will have a gathering space and fitness as well in the lower level. So basically what you're seeing here is, I'm not sure the original design, I didn't really study it overly in a lot of detail, but basically this building is a story and a half, into the ground. So it really helps. The front of the building is scaled down. There's probably really a lot more trees that have been preserved on the site plan than this rendering shows. But there are some in the background. I guess Dan had mentioned there's 20 covered parking spaces in the back. All of the units themselves have decks, which is a nice amenity. Again, the massing and the scale is as originally approved. The new work is are the building canopies. We have those are pitched roof canopies. The roof is sort of taking on a horizontal nature. And a lot of that is really driven by, building safety. We've worked on a lot of multifamily buildings. We know that sliding snow off buildings and ice is dangerous. We see it in the Old Port a lot. I have a condo at Sugarloaf, and I watch snow and ice fall off those buildings. And so a lot of this roof design is driven by safety. And how we've tried to make it work is we've basically recessed, the corners of the building. There's indents on the front of the building. And so those really read as, in our mind's eye, as dormers. And so they really, if you had a traditional house, a Cape-style house, and you had dormers, the intent is that the recess helped to make that read as a dormer-type roof. But again, we're trying to prevent snow and ice coming off this building. It's something we've done previous in the past. There's parapets on top of this roof. We've sort of made almost like a little bit of a snow and ice catch. And again, so we know that, the pitched roofs on these big buildings, we understand the topology of this is different, but again, we have to capture that snow and keep it from, dumping off. The decks, as I mentioned, the corner decks up top are set in, the others are outboard. So they would, again, catch snow and ice if if anything were to slide. The materials are clapboards, you know, a residential material. As the building gets taller in scale, we've narrowed them up. The top band is a typical clapboard like you'd find on the house. The lower level is a 10-inch clapboard. So again, so the scale and materials, you know, step with the building. I mentioned the windows a little bit. There's a combination of double hungs. There are some casements. We've had to use, so in the front, down low, those living units, the bedrooms are down low. So we've had to use casements, which allows for a smaller egress type window. So bedrooms down low, there's casements, but the other ones are, the bedrooms are gonna have double hungs. The living areas are made up of casements and picture windows. So again, you know, doors and windows that you would see, you know, in any house that you drive by and see. We talked a little bit about the color. It's sort of a crenellation of color. It's a burnt sienna. The main body of the building is a mid-tone gray. So we really think the building is meant to be neutral. We don't want it to stand out. This is not an architectural statement in our mind's eye. It's meant to, you know, provide housing, but as it's set in the woods, and what I like about the site plan is that it, you know, a lot of the trees are maintained. I know there's the buffer along the freeway, but again, this is sort of meant to sort of set within the woods, and at the same time, then we, you know, the upper band will provide just a little bit of hint of color. And then, so also one of the features is, you know, the upper units in the corners, those will be lovely units. They're up, you know, 4 stories in the air. We think on the northwest side, we think that, on a clear day, you'll see Mount Washington. So we've been kind of designing the opposite corner of what you see here to take advantage of views of Mount Washington. Thank you.
So Mark did mention sort of the site grades out there, and just for your sort of knowledge, Route 1 in front of the building is about, I don't know, 130 feet in elevation. As Mark mentioned, the building is buried about 1.5 stories in the front, so we're only looking at about 3.5 stories out front, and then in the back, obviously that's where the larger elevation is, but that faces I-295 and is buffered by that Lady Bird Johnson, I guess, preserve strip along the highway. So we do think that this has been set into the site so that it is screened fairly well from Route 1. We do have the existing buffer that we've maintained, partially because we like the idea of it being set back, but also there's a natural resource that we're protecting in that area. And then the rear part is obviously the more expansive part of the building. So that is what we had for our presentation. We do have a whole team of folks here for specific questions. We're happy to field whenever you folks feel appropriate.
Thank you. So in front of us is 2 amendments, which seem fairly straightforward. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carla. And then the big thing that's changed is a whole story came off the building, which I understand, and then significant change to the front of the building and the roof line. Can we show the old, just for comparison?
Where would that be, Bill? Okay.
That's the back view. Is that right?
Yep, there's the front view here, which would be looking from Route 1 into the building. This would be the view on the corner that's by, or the southwestern corner by 295 would be on the bottom of your screen, Route 1 would be on the top. And then this would be, oh, I'm sorry, the front view again. This would be the back view going into the parking garage here on these two locations. And then this is the view from the abutting property to the north.
Okay, thank you. And Carla, do we, as a board, have the authority to ask them to keep this look, essentially? Approve the other amendments if we so chose to try to get back to that look, if we didn't like the current look of the building?
Well, that's the purpose of design standards that the town council adopted and has asked the planning board to apply to projects on Route 1, and we also have them out on Route 100. And they're very specific. You know, I'd like to say architectural features can be, you know, design can be specific, but you know, it does talk about it talks about window design and being vertical. It talks about not having flat roofs, and you can see, yes, this one probably does have a flat roof, but by the use of gables, in peaks, you see that it kind of has more of a New England feel. The brickwork down at the bottom, stones, also lends sort of a New England architecture look. So the answer to your question is I believe you do. I believe that's why they were adopted.
Well, I don't think my interpretation would be, we can't say it has to go back to that.
No.
We could say, we don't find that the current design meets the Route 1 design standards. But, and those are standards. I know they started out as guided, but they are officially standards now, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Comments?
Yeah, I think just a couple things. In the letter from Hall this is regarding financing, before I talk about the design, there's on page 41, I guess writing to Mark, the end of the first paragraph says, "The borrower shall have form to develop a 42-unit multifamily development in Portland." So perhaps they'd want to know that it's not in Portland, that it's in Cumberland. And the letter then says, "This does not constitute a commitment to provide money." So it's a very legalistic, I'm not an attorney. I've read, 10, 12 pages of conditions. So at some point, I'm hoping somebody can intelligently tell me or tell us that actually you have a financial commitment. It doesn't sound like you do. And then the third thing is to the design. I've looked through this last few days through the Design 1 standards, and to me, no way does it match anything suggested, from the roof line to the window treatment to the lack of trim to the overall aesthetics. The building, to me, looks much more commercial than residential. So, at least in my view, it does not match what has been suggested in what's been published.
Peter?
Yeah, as I say, spent time going through it, and I had the same concerns that Paul did with regard to the financial letter, that I didn't think that met. So I think there's going to have to be some work done on that. The architectural thing is really very difficult because, in the sense that I'm not an architectural genius. I mean, I think one of the Supreme Court justices, one time when questioned on pornography, said he knew it when he saw it. And I think kind of a similar thing with regard to the architectural thing. Going through, I just wasn't comfortable with it with regard to, I was, I think, on the council when we developed those standards, and it just doesn't, it just didn't smell right to me. But I'm not an architectural genius, so I don't want to be the first one to say how you do it, but I can honestly say I was not comfortable with this design, and you know, take it where it may.
Ann?
Okay. Yeah, I'll start out with a comment on the design then. I think this is a very nice-looking building. I think it has a flavor of like a mill that would go with a mill town, which I think you said, but we're not a mill town. We are a farming community, and I don't think it meets our design standards as well. I'm also a little concerned about the roof. To me, that looks like a lot of flat roof. And I've had experience in the past. I worked for a building products company once that was sued and sued and sued over flat roofs. And they said, is there a flat roof anywhere that doesn't leak? So maybe the snow isn't falling off it, but is it not going to leak? So I'm a little concerned about that roof. Now, and I think the prior design did have more of a shore feeling, which is, this was, is down nearer the shore. Okay, and then on the financial thing, to me, it's like a non-commitment financial letter. And does that satisfy us? I haven't seen us accept something like that in the past, I don't think.
Yeah.
Please.
Right, so Gen X Capital Partners, we're a direct lender, and we do about $100 million a year in Maine and New England lending money. I can't lend to my own project with our credit line, and so I use Hall Financial Capital out of Dallas. And they're willing to commit to this project, but there's caveats. One, they need to see the full approvals, this part here, a full budget. And so once I have a full budget, that in the GMAX budget that matches up to what we're telling them, then they'll give a full commitment. But they say, well, we want to do the project, but this is what we can give you right now, subject to you getting us the budget that meets, what you're talking about, 14.2 or 14.5 million in hard costs, and the full approvals, which is what we're waiting on right now for this. Once we have that, in the next, hopefully, 30 days or what have you, we'll have a full commitment. I guess in the meantime, what I can do is, if it helps, get a letter from the president of the company or what have you, to give you some assurances that, subject to those caveats being met, that we'll have the full financing. But they just can't put that out there without the budget and the GMAX contract and then full approvals. So that's,
Josh?
I mean, honestly, this is quite better than a lot of our projects come in with in terms of detailing the terms and conditions of a financial commitment. I think maybe the way to do it is just, we could probably do a proposed condition of approval. We could do a condition of approval to show final commitment from the bank, final approval of the loan terms and conditions between the bank and the borrower at the pre-construction conference. Because no bank is going to give a lender here's a whole bunch of money before you get approvals out of the planning board. So we're going to be caught in a catch-22 if we keep banging on them. So we can do it as a condition of approval, I think.
Carla?
So back when you were on the board before, you probably remember the word commitment letters. And banks used to give them out. They basically said, we are going to finance this project as designed. And then when the recession hit and the bank industry was in a turmoil, they pretty much stopped giving commitment letters. And what they give instead are these, we'll look at financing this based on what we see, but more importantly, based on our knowledge of the developer and his track record, we are inclined to funding this project. This person's a customer of our bank, has been longstanding, doing business with our bank. We understand they have the resources to do projects like this. Those are the terms, and I'm not sure I'm seeing that in here. So I just wanted the board to know that's what we're looking at. Obviously, they aren't going to start working on this building until they have a performance guarantee in place. And that performance guarantee is going to be a letter of credit or bond or cash, which is unlikely with a project of this size. So that performance guarantee will be based on the actual schedule of values, the actual cost of all the elements of doing this project. What the board's looking for, I feel like I'm going to swallow it soon. Really? Okay. Do I have to say all that again? No, I'm not going to do that. So what the board's looking for really is some assurance that the project that's before them and the developer that's proposing it has the wherewithal financially as well as technically, which I'm not questioning whether they have the technical capacity. That was a positive finding. The question is interpreting this letter and determining whether this financial capacity proven for approval.
Okay. Paul?
But I'd agree with Josh that we could have a condition that we receive documents that would satisfy everything you've been talking about. So I'm with Josh on that as a condition.
Don't we have a prior condition of approval that would cover that, if we're carrying those forward?
No, in what we had, I think it was Katahdin before, correct?
No, bridge cap.
Okay. I think the original might have been a one-paragraph letter from Aaron at Katahdin, which, spelled out none of the terms and conditions. And we were fine with that because of and I think we had this discussion, because of the proposed condition of approval for the performance guarantee. And that really, that's the piece that is, sometimes we care the most about. But anyway, I think I'm fine with just making a condition of approval, final approval of the loan.
Okay, so how would we handle the design standards, Carla?
Hey, can I just, sorry, before we get in there, because I think that's going to be kind of involved. What is the natural gas issue? I couldn't find that anywhere, and I tried.
I don't know of any issue. I would just think we mentioned that we had relocated the entrance into the site from the front of the building down to the back of the building.
For the natural gas hookup?
Natural gas,
Okay,
yep.
so, okay. In the condition of approval for traffic, it says the applicant is looking for a waiver of a traffic study, but I don't see a waiver for a traffic study. And I don't know that we need a waiver for the traffic study. It's certainly going to be less traffic than was approved previously, but do you think you need a waiver for the traffic study?
No, I would agree with your second statement that we've reduced traffic out here.
Okay,
Original approval.
right, so okay. I think we're going to have to, I'm not sure we can, I think the findings of fact may have changed too much here to waive the reading of the findings of fact, especially as they're substantially changed, and we may have to change them more as we go through. One more thing about waivers, Dan. In your letter, you were requesting that we consider four waivers: trees 10 inches greater in diameter, high intensity, soil study, market study, hydrogeological. I believe we've already approved all of those.
I think we've requested them 3 or 4 times now.
Right. Do you think you need those approved again, or are you okay with where they?
Totally fine with the originals if those still stick, yeah.
And Carla, once we've waived it once for a project, do we need to, if it's an amendment, do we need to re-waive things? Or do they travel with the, I think they travel with the initial approval.
I'm really not sure. I think it doesn't hurt to state that you are approving this project with the waivers that were previously approved. You could do something like that just at least acknowledges that there were these waivers.
Okay. That's it, sorry.
Okay. So we can't just reuse the findings of facts, is what you're saying, Josh? Too much has
I
changed?
modified quite a few of them
Yeah.
from the original.
There's a bunch of
approval.
conditions of approval, subject to conditions of approval, and there's that traffic study thing that I think we're gonna have to modify from what's in there right now.
Okay. So I guess the question again, on the design standards, how would we handle that if I'm hearing that a good portion of the board isn't happy with that design?
Well, I want to remind that the public hearing.
Right.
It'd be interesting to hear if people in the audience have an opinion on it. Beyond that, I don't think it would be necessarily worth going through all of the findings if you're essentially going to be asking them to go back to the drawing board to some level and putting in some elements that you've discussed here tonight.
Okay. Anything else, Dan, before we open the public hearing?
No, I'm all set. Thanks.
All right, so we'll open the public hearing. Anybody want to comment on this project? Please step up to the mic and introduce yourself.
My name is Sandra Lee Porter. I'm in a butter. My husband and I live at 106 Route 1. First of all, I've been assuming that the current design we're looking at has an identical footprint to the previous design. It does. Okay. I'd like to know whether or not the occupants will be owners or renters. They'd all be renters? As far as the coloring, I think the coloring on this design is an improvement over the previous design. As far as the flatness of the roof, I think it would be a better design to have a more traditional roof. Will there be dynamiting in order to create this project? If this project is approved, can you what's your best estimate as to when the dynamiting would start?
For it?
At this point, we're on pace to hopefully get final issue for construction set out mid-May, June sometime, so it would be within the months after that. So I'd say around summertime or so, the site prep work would begin.
Thank you.
One of my major concerns is that I work out of my home, and noise from dynamiting will be an interruption of my work. Is there any way that can be mitigated?
Well, there'll certainly be a blasting plan that will have to be submitted and approved by the code enforcement officer in town that will speak to certain restrictions on level of blast based on how close the abutting houses are, the different sound regulations that the state has for blasting. So there will be a very detailed plan that the contractor will have to get approved to the town that will address a lot of those concerns. From a timing standpoint, I think the town construction hours are from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., so there's not a lot of flexibility within those hours, and the blasting contractors like to get in and get out as soon as they can, so they're not there for multiple months instead of getting it over with as soon as possible. So I'd look to the blasting plan for significant detail on sound control and control on the level of blast. And then from a timing standpoint, we can certainly have the folks from the owner's rep meet with you and talk about timing as it comes closer.
And just to be clear, this, what's in front of us here is an amendment to an approved plan already. So I mean, they could move forward with their approved plan just the way it was. This is for amendments. So the project has already been approved to a certain degree prior, many times prior. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Further comments?
Yeah. Good night.
Paul?
Mr. Mueller, could I ask, again, the published design standards for the Route 1, and respectfully, I know that, I'm sure this is very complicated, the changes you made and with the metal roof so the snow would slide, but did you look at the design standards that we published? And if you did, could you comment on, I know you mentioned safety, you mentioned snow, but why would we go so far away from what has been published? I mean, in some places like the Pratt Abbott building and so forth, this roof, it states this is inappropriate. No detailing on the windows, this is not what, there are pretty clear, definitive opinions
Yep.
published. Just curious in your
Well,
take on that.
yeah, we fully understand, New England architecture. We realize this is a large building for this town. It was, that's something we realized early on. The ordinance we did have said that, flat roofs weren't permitted unless you could meet, the other elements of the ordinance. And so, although we have kind of create a different sort of a composition per se, we feel we did really follow those. I do realize that, the horizontal roof, but again, it's for safety. The previous design, it had a flat roof as well. It had gables that were just kind of tacked on. It really wasn't a true gable roof like you would see in an old hotel, we'll say, for example. It was a flat roof tacked on. We've really adhered to the 50-foot requirement. The drawings that we'd had in the previous design had elements that were above 50. And so we worked really hard with Dan and Bill Longley to establish this average grade plane. It's a complicated element, but it's sort of the basis of the building. Our design adheres strictly to that 50 feet. And so that is, that and the safety was a strong element. We'd looked at, tacking, pasting things on, but we didn't want to do that. We really believe in good, strong, solid design, just tacking things on. The other building, I don't want to think bad about, those architects. It's a very hard career. It's hard to do this, and so they do not deserve to be put up against. But those gables were just pasted on, and so that's not really truth in lending, we'll say. And so we tried to work from that. The colors, we like color. The other building had sort of, we try to use colors that don't really represent vinyl siding. The yellow and the cream, or there's just certain colors that have the stigma of vinyl siding, and so that's kind of how we got away from the yellow. And I know your ordinance doesn't really talk about color, but it is important, and so that's sort of some of the thought process that we went through. And so some of that building was above 50 feet, and so we think ours is a little bit more compliant with maybe not the design review standards, but the actual zone standards. So that's kind of how we got here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, and I do think the color's fine here. That's not an issue. Thank you.
My concern personally is not the color. It's just kind of breaking up the front, and so you're saying basically the gables on the other plan were strictly aesthetic. They weren't-
Aesthetic and really just sort of tacked on. They were the infamous Hancock lumber, building. The dormer came out to the end, and it was just trim, tacked on. It was not a true authentic gable set back. A lot of design review ordinances, they demand that the gable be, or that the dormer be set back to create that true roof. Yours doesn't say that, but in a lot of towns it does. And so that's kind of how we got here with, there's nothing tacked on here. The windows, there is trim on these windows. It is an artistic rendering. There will be trim on the windows. If the picture windows are disconcerting, and maybe they are from the inside out. I think the owners have tried to really create a little bit more of a contemporary living, from the interior. So these are combinations that any house that you might see here in Cumberland, for example, would have these window types. We've configured them a little bit different, but, that's not really to a detriment. But we'd be willing to, look at, changing the window types to maybe all double hungs. If that's, some of them we can't. Some of them have to stay casements, but again, the casements we have check rails attached to them, so they will look like a double hung.
Okay. So as I remember, when this project was before us the first few times prior to final approval, the discussion was that these were going to be sold as, high-end condos, but that is no longer the case. These are all going to be rental units.
Yeah, originally we were gonna do that, but the units, the ceiling heights were 8 feet, 8 feet 2 inches, which was just, they're not sellable. They're just not in this market. And so we looked at that and we said, okay, well, let's bring the unit count down, make the ceiling heights higher. And then we did some research in the marketplace, and quite honestly, there's a really big need more for multifamily housings than there are for condos. And so we did a research in the marketplace with our lenders and our investors, and they said, yeah, it makes more sense for apartments from an investment standpoint, but also from a marketing standpoint, because, the need is there. For condos, it's sort of not so much. But multifamily housing's in a big need in Southern Maine, as you know. And so, yeah, we transitioned into that and went from 5 floors to 4 floors. And the ceiling heights are a lot more sexier now and more livable than they were beforehand. So that's what made that change.
Okay. Further comments, anybody? So I think I'm hearing 4 or 5 board members, Carla, that aren't pleased with meeting the design standards. So what would be the most efficient route at this point? Would we table it, move forward with the amendments that they're looking for with further conditions, or?
Could I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I wonder again if you just mentioned changes to windows, maybe to trim or to some, what else could be done that you think would, again, sounds like you know what the design standards are, to bring it closer to what the standards are that have been published? Obviously, the roof is a major issue, I think, that imagine that would be a pretty large change because of elevation issues.
It is, would you allow the building to go up above 50 feet?
No. No, I mean, that's not our prerogative, and it's in the ordinance. I mean,
Yeah.
it is an ordinance. But I'm just, before we possibly make a decision, I'm just curious, interested in giving you a chance to have input that you could come back to us with something that is a little closer to what all of us interpret the standards to be. It is subjective, I realize that, and it's very hard when something's subjective, because it's a should versus a must type issue, and those are always difficult for any of us, and probably for you also.
Yeah, it's a little bit like design school, where you put yourself out there, you have ideas, and you put yourself out there, and then the professors, comment and critique. I think probably the windows are, we were trying to create, not a statement, but just something that really took it from the inside out. We were trying to take advantage more of, the height, the views. I mean, certainly up top of this building, it's gonna be lovely. I know you're gonna see the rolling foothills. We're very certain you're gonna see Mount Washington on a clear day in the distance. So we were really thinking from an interior point of view. Your ordinance, all design review ordinances really think from the outside. I think probably the windows is probably one area that could, we could, I don't want to say simplify, but, because again, we have traditional windows, we've just used them in a little bit different way. And so we can put the creativity aside, and I think probably windows. I know there was stone before, down below. I have to tell you, construction is extremely expensive right now. Everything is, we did, every job we have, everyone, 100% are over budget. And so we've had to try to create, we've tried to use basic design to create buildings that we think are interesting, but not using a lot of gimmicks to create that interest. And so that sort of takes it to a different level discussion. But again, we've tried to eliminate, we've tried to create an interesting building and not use expensive materials. I can tell you right now, the building is over budget, and so I can't really speak to the financial aspect of it to it. I guess we could probably, look at, creating another base level, before you had a base, a midsection, a capital. I think probably the windows and trying to create a base would be one window, one opportunity. I'm not sure how the other building got permitted over 50 feet, but we'll take.
Sorry, I don't recall that it was.
That could be, Carl, the drawings that we have show it, we see
It might have
it
been an
above.
interpretation of the average height thing, but I know that Bill Longley, for that project, approved the building height, so I don't think he would have allowed the design to be above.
Okay, well,
the
there's something
50 feet.
above, there's something above 50 feet, but that's okay. I think, window configurations and base.
And not the roof line, you're not interested in,
Well, we can look at that. Again, we can look at that. It's hard to, when you start adding pitched roofs to these buildings, we're gonna lose, units. And so that's, I'm not sure how to balance that, staying at 50 feet. And, unless we tack on, we could tack on, we could paste the gables on like before.
to me, what makes the difference between the old design and this design is breaking up that roof line and breaking up the front of it. I understand from an architect's point of view that that's the cheap way of putting gables up there, but it breaks up the eye, and
Yeah.
to me, I think that helps the look of it. This looks to me like a box that was a mill and does not have the same high-end feel as the previous design.
Again, we have to be careful of the snow, again, the snow slide.
Yeah, could you say a little bit more about the roof? What is it constructed of? Is that a metal roof, or is it,
It would be rubber.
it's a rubber?
Yeah,
roof?
EPDM would be the technical term for it.
Okay.
I know you said they leak. We've never had that. We specify a thick rubber. We have good general contractors that put these together, and we've never had leaks. All the multifamily buildings that we design have flat roofs. Why? Because they're safe. There's no snow coming off this roof. And so that's important to us. I'm the only one that has to accept the liability of if somebody gets hurt. Out of all of us in this room, I'm the only one. And so I have to design buildings that are safe. And it's not, I'm not trying to force a statement onto your town, but I have to design safe buildings.
Okay. Further comments from the board?
Yeah, I'd just like to, I'll be honest, when I saw the pictures in this presentation, I was like, am I looking at a new building? Because it felt very different from before, and I know that the design standards allow for a modern interpretation of the styles, but I feel like that this kind of went just one step maybe too far, because it does look very different. I'm not opposed to that type of design of a building, but I think given what we had approved before and what we're seeing now, it's a dramatic difference in style. So the other part of the design standards are, using traditional barns as an inspiration. So again, I think what's really driving the change for me in the building, I'm not concerned about the windows. It really, to me, is the roof line. It changed from what felt more residential to something more commercial. So that's where my head is right now in terms of looking at this. It feels very, very different from what we had looked at before.
I think one of the things about the ordinance is, I think it's good. It's not meant for a building of this scale. And I understand that this is a large building for Cumberland. Those ordinances were not written for a building that had this much volume to it. And so it is, the volume of it is allowed. How it's written is good, but it's really meant more for a two-story building, maybe down on Route 1 that's, and we, most of the two-story buildings we design have pitched roofs as well. So this isn't really anything, we're not modernists. We just, we were asked to create something a little bit new and different. And so that's kind of how we got here. I think we can work on it. And you just have to realize that your ordinance is really meant for, small buildings, and I think that's, but we're good to work on it.
Carla?
I think if the architect looked at section 2.2, large-scale buildings, so we do address larger-scale buildings, and really focused on the elements there, design and massing, large mass broken into smaller visual components, recesses, various facade treatment, showing shadow and depth and a feeling of reduced scale. It's all in here. Section 2.2 talks about architectural details, facades and exterior walls and roof lines. And I think if you just went through that and see what you can do with your existing footprint, the existing height limit, I think that would be a direction that might help you understand.
All those things you mentioned we have. It's just, it's a tall building. But
Do you have other pictures that you can share? I mean, I have, up on the screen.
Oh, I see.
I mean, for me, it's easier to see the front.
Does that help at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, I have them. But I mean, it's easier to see the shading on the other drawings, yeah. So you do get a little bit of depth and a little bit of definition in the space.
You can see the indents in the corners. We created recesses. Our goal was to, set these in and so they read like dormers. And so they're tall, the type of roof you can see, you have a roof up above. These are meant to read as dormers, similar to a house along the seaside. The building massing is broke up. We didn't do that. That was here. We have gable, small, bay windows. Again, a traditional element. The center canopy here. This is an entrance. This building has. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. This building we really see it as a two front building. I realize that part of it is on the, on I-295. However, most all the parking is in the back. And your ordinance talks about that, so that was good that how Dan did that. So we really, on the back of the building, we have, there's another element here that's been created to, denote entrance. You won't see that, but it is there, and it creates shadow. Again, the recesses on the front are meant to emulate a dormer. So how do you sort of represent a pitched roof and not have a pitched roof, for safety and height? Again, this building meets 50 feet, and yet make it look like, a traditional building. So I think, maybe these windows here, these are, interesting configurations. These are, again, traditional windows. I think probably the windows on these corner units, they're lovely from the inside, but maybe, I think we could change those.
Okay. I'm not hearing support here for this design. I'm guessing this is going to be back in front of us at some point. What's the best way to do that, Carla?
I think you would make a motion to table it and give as specific instruction as you can to what you want to see come back.
Okay. Comments from the board on specifics, other than what Carla has offered? Dan?
Yeah, Mr. Schimberg would like to ask a question of the board before we move past this point.
Sure.
Hi, Greg Schinberg. I'm the owner's rep for the project. And I apologize if maybe you all know the question answer better than I do. On the back of the building facing 295, does the design ordinance also apply? Meaning, is a flat roof on the back side acceptable, or does design ordinance apply to the entire building?
Carla?
It's really looking at what do you see from Route 1? So I would say that you don't have to be as strict on the backside at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Comments? Paul?
No, did you want to make a motion, Josh, or?
Yeah, we just, one question for you, Carla. On this, we are actually amending subdivision, and we would be amending if we were going to amend anything. Subdivision and site plan.
Correct.
Okay. I guess then I will make a motion that we table any amendment to an approved subdivision and site plan for the Mark at Cumberland Foreside, formerly Broad Cove Ridge Apartments, located at US 102 US Route 1, tax assessor map R01 lot 13B.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
So discussion and specifics that we can help with further for them? I mean, I guess I would work with Carla, and I'm happy to chime in the meantime to get to the next stage on how I would interpret things. To me personally, you know, I've seen this project many times, and early on, I was concerned with a 50-unit, you know, apartment building or whatever, and what they did and how they broke it up, it ended up looking very nice. So I think it can be done. Paul?
Well, I'd be very supportive of the project and I think it would be great to have there. I was positive from the beginning. I think it's the perfect spot to have a condominium building, and realizing it's going to be there a long time, and it does influence maybe we don't want to be too sensitive to the appearance that Cumberland portrays, but I think you could maybe do a little better, or by that I mean getting closer to what has been published, and whether you keep the back the same, maybe alter the front, even grills and windows, you mentioned double hung windows, more detail, something closer to the traditional look, and I really look forward to you coming back and we approve of the project. I think all of us would love to have that project there.
I'd like to hear people in town say that, wow, that 40 units and it just came out looking so great, and I don't think this does it. Ann?
Yeah, I just have a question. Since it came to us the first time, it came to us the first time as a condominium project, and now it's apartments. Does that make a difference in our approvals?
I don't think it does. What you're really looking at is, for site plan, is the site, and
Okay.
and what happens inside the building is less of a concern.
Okay.
If the council didn't want to have rental units, then they would say something in the ordinance that they had to be ownership or something like that, so. I think it's unfortunate. I think condominiums would have a higher tax value perhaps to the town, and provide more of like a sense of the community, some people that are buying in and staying there. We already do have the 96 units down on the lower part of Route 1 that are apartments, so
I also feel the same way. I'm disappointed that that's the direction it's going, but. Okay, further comments? Anyone? Okay, so a motion to table, all in favor? All opposed? Unanimous?
Thank you,
See you
folks.
next time, guys.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to item G2, a public hearing for a recommendation to the town council on proposed amendments to the Cumberland Code of Ordinance, Chapter 226 Shoreland Zoning to align with state requirements. And I assume that this, I went through this packet and I read Bill Longley's write-up, and I assume it's been reviewed by legal counsel and all that, correct? Yes, okay. So to me, this looked pretty straightforward. Nothing jumped out at me, and being a camp owner, not necessarily in this town, but in another town, I think this is kind of a good thing. It'll bring revenue to the state. So, others, comments?
Yeah.
Paul?
You know, I guess a question whether to Carla or to Bill. There are a number of typos. I have maybe 6 or 7. Do we want to do those now, or should I get together with after? Or I would guess other members have some misspellings, that type of thing. Do we care about that, or somebody else going to be?
Go for it, rattle them off.
Proof.
I would
If you
have
got 'em.
thought, Bill Longley prepared this, and I would have thought he took whatever the state language was.
I can do it pretty
But
quickly.
it may not, so yeah.
Okay, so on page 5, last paragraph, third line up, again, these are just minor, mostly spellings. So a targ should be target, I believe.
Yeah, and, because I don't seem to have page numbers, so I can't.
Okay,
I don't know
it's
why.
under functionally water.
Right, yep, and right after that, a targ is an area where personal injury or personal damage could occur, but I'm wondering if that's supposed to be property damage, not personal damage, because it then goes on to talk about things that would be property damage.
Okay, I'll go through my list. On page 11, are you good with the pages, Christina?
Oh, I see.
On, next to the last paragraph, I think "the" was in front of, it's the 4th line up from that bottom of that stream paragraph. I think "the" was unintentionally crossed out. So, the stream. Page 25. I think the word butter should be buffer. And that's in the second paragraph down and under note, and it's the next to the last sentence at the end.
Well, can I just interject?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
In a number of places, there are notes embedded in here, which I think need to be, note. A municipality can choose to do, I mean, those have to come out.
I hear what you're saying, yeah. I'll go through it with Bill and
Right.
edit it.
Yeah, there seem to be some parts, I'm sorry, there seem to be some parts that are within our discretion. They say they're within our discretion, and I'm wondering, does that mean we need to make a decision, or?
Um, The planning board doesn't really approve any of the shoreline zoning any longer. Very few.
I'll look at it.
Well, for instance, and I can't tell what the page number is, because for some reason, my bottom of the page
Here's
becomes
what I
one
would tell you.
big,
is
huge.
This is not time sensitive. It is housekeeping. If
I'm-
we're not clear, and like I said, this isn't my thing, so I can't really tell you what it is. We can certainly clean up, do some editing, and I think what you're saying about, removing language like that doesn't make
Right,
sense.
like, if you look at page 26, if you go to the, you know, the little,
We're without laptops anymore.
oh,
They
okay,
died on
sorry.
the-
So this is if you go to, you know, where you look at them all next,
Yep.
yeah, this would be page 26 there, because I don't have any other page numbers. There's a note at the bottom, it says, "A municipality may choose not to adopt paragraph 22624A4 below. However, if a municipality elects to adopt a provision similar to that subparagraph, it must be no less restrictive." So we have a choice. Yes, and-
I would, I asked Bill if he could
Or
attend
maybe the
tonight.
town
He was not
council.
available, but maybe
Yeah.
next month, have Bill come and
I think that's a
do
good
this,
idea.
would be helpful.
But before we table it,
Yeah.
it's a public hearing.
Say again?
It's a public hearing. Not that I think
So
we're going to
Chris-
hear anything.
Christina, page 11, you change butter to buffer, right? At the bottom of the page, you know, we have a whole section of definitions. The last paragraph on that same page, my question is, why don't we just define non-vegetated surfaces? You could ask Bill that. Because now they're defining it here, whereas everything else is defined earlier, which to me seems inconsistent. And then, only a couple more things. Ann has already mentioned the reserve. There are some places on pages 37 through 41. I'm not sure the numbering is right. I won't suggest numbering, but there's something to check, because it kind of skips around, and because of the reserved notes, I don't know what number is correct and what isn't. And the last thing I have on page 52, top of the page, and it's under, it's the top paragraph. It talks about, it says, if the removal of storm-damaged trees exceeds 40% of the volume of trees, I think that should be number of trees. How do we measure volume of trees? So just change that. And that to me is,
Yeah, and that's a good example of Bill Longley needing to talk to you about it, because there used to be a thing about the volume of the canopy.
okay, well, maybe he meant that, but to me, it made no sense at all.
I understand.
Yeah.
but-
And that's, other than all the comments, the yellow marks, I have no idea what some of those means, but those are the things I noted.
Okay, why don't we open the public hearing? Anybody gonna speak about shoreline zoning? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Peter?
Just for a note for, you know, anybody that's out there, there's, as far as Cumberland concerned, my understanding is there are about 10 properties over on Forest Lake that this might be applicable to. But do note that there are very specific things in the ordinance regarding, probably the most important thing is dealing with vegetation and trees, and within 25 feet in some instances and 75 feet in others, where it's very specific what you can cut and what you can't cut, and expands, like Jason says, that folks out there that have camps, this is a statewide ordinance and is applicable to any of us that have a camp. And I think the piece of advice that I've got through reading all of these pages is that before you even look cross-eyed at a tree, that you do need to consult your local code enforcement officer. I was talking to my son today with regard to that, and I said, when we're doing stuff up there, we are talking to the code enforcement officer in Auburn, and he said yes. So I think this is good information to anybody that's out there that does have a camp, that this is very specific, and also if you choose to add on to your camp or put buildings or everything. So kind of a public service announcement that this isn't just a bunch of words put down there, that there's some very, very specific things, and I would pay very close attention if I were you and us.
I will make a motion to table any recommendation to town council on proposed amendments to the Cumberland Code of Ordinances, Chapter 226, shoreline zoning.
Second.
Okay, before we vote, Carla and Christina, how would you like to, next steps as far as like getting edits, further edits from us or whatever? And
I can work with Bill to clean up the document, and I'll see if he can come to the next meeting. I think that might be helpful.
is this worthwhile to have a workshop or no? Sorry.
No, I think he felt it was pretty housekeeping, so I think he can answer those questions.
Okay, Peter?
But it didn't sound like it if there are a couple things where the town has to decide whether they do something or not. Isn't that something that needs to be bounced back to the ordinance committee?
I wish I could answer all of your questions. To be honest, I didn't even read through those changes. I just asked him for a nice memo that would clearly explain what the changes were.
Well, it's a wonderful memo, but,
Synopsis was good, but now we're digging into the details, yes.
but I think,
The overview was good, the
but I
details.
think Shirley, I don't know if Shirley's still chairman of the ordinance committee, but I think they need to, how many did we find? I know there was another one too.
There's
So
a
I
few
think-
things.
Oh, the notes,
Yeah, so I think we need to bounce some of that back to people that are smarter than I am.
I don't know if you have that much time. No, in all seriousness, this is supposed to get back to the state with these adoptions to our shoreline zoning. So we've kind of not had this before you previously, so I think a lot of this is housekeeping. I think if Bill were here tonight, a lot of this could be cleared up tonight too. So we don't do a lot at the planning board level with the shoreline zoning ordinance. It's more done with the Coastal Waters Commission now and with Bill Longley directly. So even the ordinance committee would be looking for your recommendation, and that's why we're kind of bouncing the ball back and forth.
So do we have enough time to put it on the
We
next
have enough time to
meeting?
do it on the next meeting, but
Okay.
to kick it down further down the road, I think would be
Fine.
difficult.
Okay. Paul?
I like the idea of Carla working with Bill, and it's pretty wordsmithing. If you have 7 people, 10 people, it's very hard to do. So I hope that happens.
Ann?
I have one request too. There's a lot of different colors in here, and there's no guide as to what the colors mean. So if he could do a little.
The green.
Oh. Oh,
We'll clear that up.
okay, thank you.
And I will try to get it out to you well in advance of the next meeting, so you have some time to go through it and let us know what particular changes you need. And when
Thank you.
see it next
Sure, we
time,
all
it'll
look
be all clean.
forward to that greatly, Carla, thank you.
Okay, motion on the table is to table this item. All in favor? Okay, all opposed, nobody unanimous. I don't feel like we're being very effective tonight. I'm sorry, folks. Okay, Bill, next item, G3, public hearing, recommendation of the town council on the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2022 through 2027, is presented by town manager Bill Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be a lot less painful, so I do promise. This is pretty straightforward. Carla and I talked today briefly. I made this presentation last night to the town council, and I thought it would be important that the planning board had an ability to see this as well. And what this is about are basically our Route 100 economic redevelopment plan. And it's not really going to be back before you, other than tonight or in public hearings at the council level more so. Tom Gruber's here tonight. He's on the TIF committee as well as on our finance committee. They've heard it several times, and we're pretty excited about what we have before the town and over the next several months. So, as you know, Route 100, the biggest challenge we've had at Route 100 has been the intersection of Blackstrap and Skillen Road. And that's right here, smack in the middle of your screen here. And I'll actually turn the screen a little bit. That's better. Tom could probably do the presentation. He's heard it many times, so. Right now, what you see here is, what we're proposing is a roundabout for the intersection. We have tried for almost 30 years, don't worry about, that's a terrible TV screen right there. What people are seeing at home is what I see on my monitor. So, but thank you. What we have tried unsuccessfully for well over 30 years now is to try to get a traffic signal at this intersection. And the problem with the traffic signal is it doesn't meet specific traffic warrants for basically the traveling traffic. There's not enough delay times, there's not enough accidents, and I would argue if you know the intersection well enough, there have been plenty of accidents. But the way they measure accidents are over a 3-year period. And we always kind of just tweak around the edges over a 3-year period, and then for a couple of years it falls off, and it's a 3-year rolling average. So we never get to a bad level. And before we get to a terrible accident there, and I believe there was testimony last night, there were some fatalities back in the 50s and 60s, I would really like to try to do something a little bit better. So what we proposed is a roundabout, and then we proposed basically sidewalks. These pink lines are sidewalks essentially in each direction. And I have to make it a little bit smaller. Out here, they kind of end out somewhere near Skillen's greenhouses and the side streets there. Up here, it's near Tammy Lane. And here, heading west toward up Blackstrap Road, we're trying to stop somewhere near the bridge because in the future, that bridge deck will be replaced. And my guess, I'll put the sidewalk on the wrong side because if for some reason it can't go on the other side of the bridge deck. So I said, let's wait and see before we get too far down the road which is the best side for the sidewalk. So they kind of end at George Road right now. And then we'll extend them once the bridge over the turnpike is redecked. And then to the southerly direction, we're looking all the way down to the 2 neighborhoods at the foot of Morrison's Hill. That's been, you've heard it many times in front of the planning board, in front of the council, especially about extending sidewalks, making that area safe. 50+ mile an hour traffic going through there now. This will all have to change if this plan goes forward. I've been in discussion with the DOT possibly for the last 2 years now because I felt that we should be able to do something better with Route 100. If you think about Route 100, there's an interchange in Falmouth, there's an interchange in Gray that you can get on the turnpike and go north, south, wherever you want to go. We have tried unsuccessfly to ask for an interchange in Cumberland. We actually even provided a conceptual design which would have used the plazas on both sides to actually use as the on and off ramps to the interstate, similar to what Kennebunk used to be years and years ago. That didn't go very well. My $5 million design quickly turned into a $25 million design by the turnpike engineer, so kind of thanks but no thanks. So we've done a lot out there to try to encourage economic development. And then the roundabout came about, and actually, Carlo and I were kicking around ideas, and she said, well, what about a roundabout? And honestly, roundabouts are about $5 million. And they're crazy money when you look at the alternatives that might be out there, but we're never going to get a traffic light. 2 years ago, before COVID, the DOT came and met us in, I think at the West Cumberland Hall, Tom, or it might have been here. They came in with the idea of a 4-way stop sign. And those of you who know that area, everybody was polite that night. Nobody burst out laughing. Everybody kind of said, thanks, but no thanks. So let's leave it the way it is before we go to a 4-way stop sign. So what we did then is said, okay, what can we actually do to this area that would make it a little bit better? And this is what it looks like today. And when we put vision to this, we can start seeing that for us, we just have to have some ideas that we can present out to the public and to the business communities that say, hey, this community wants to be part of a business development plan. And what we're showing here is obviously the roundabout. Here's Cop Motors right here on the corner. This would be a series of shops on the first floor and walk-up apartments on the second floor. We would look at banks, hardware stores, some type of a nursery school or daycare center here. Just a lot of different things and a lot of elements that we want to present to the business world that this is what we'd like to see in Cumberland. We don't want to see 44 box stores. We don't want to see, Hannaford North here. We've already have, they're close enough. We don't have enough property to do that. And we want to make this feel more like community businesses and our local businesses. We're going to have to create this as a destination point. The center of this intersection abuts within a 10-mile radius about 32,000 properties between Falmouth, Wyndham, Gray, and Cumberland. So there are plenty of people that could support this area, and I think if we can show that we have a vision for this area, I think that would be very successful. And I love these little sliders, and I'm sorry, this is my toy, and I'm going to play with it. So now you can see what it looks like today. A different viewpoint would be, looking down the street, down the road. And these are all possibilities. When Falmouth put the rotary in just south on Route 9, it was really a question mark for me whether it was going to work. And I thought they did a nice job. I thought the one at USM, if you've been by the law library, I think they did a really nice job there as well. So if they're done right, it really makes a difference. The other element, I'm sure we're going to get to the end of the sliders, I promise. This is just another view looking down Route 100 to the south. And again, sidewalks, bike lanes, two-way traffic, and basically the shops that would basically line the street. Now, we're not proposing to build the shop, so Bill Shane hasn't opened the business school and the economic development offices that deep yet. But we are really trying to encourage people. So when people come in to talk with Carla and myself, we basically can sit down and say, this is what we're thinking. And we can say, and what we're not thinking is this, this, and this. So if you're in our, if you want to be here, this is what we'd like you to work with. What we've also shared is that the center of this island can be just about anything. And we're going out to West Cumberland on Tuesday night at the community hall. The council's coming out. We're going to basically set up tables around and just basically ask people to give us their input and give us some ideas. Those of you who have been around the country and especially in Europe, you know that there are just so many different types of styles for these roundabouts. And they're just really limited by kind of our imagination in a lot of ways. I really believe that we can do a lot of things. I'm a big fan of the artwork and the sculptures. This is for Carla, this is for me, this is for Peter. So, we're looking at trying to be something different. I want you to drive down Route 100 and want to stop because you feel like you've arrived at something. If you've been through Belgrade Lakes, and I'm using that example till the cows come home, because when you drive through there, you go, wait a minute, what's going on here? There's sidewalks on both sides, there's shops on both sides, and you feel like you need to pull over because there's something you're missing if you drive through. That's what I want the Route 100 corridor to look like, and I really want to work toward a plan and a vision that we as a community can embrace, and we just feel good about what this looks like. If we do nothing, if the community says thanks but no thanks, the next 70 years are going to be no different what the last 70 years were. There just really hasn't been enough. We've gotten some excitement going when the board barn went in, and then when DJ Smalls put his beautiful business, that's one of the examples we use all the time out there. The bird sanctuary out there. There's some really nice and attractive buildings coming. I think the investment from the greenhouse, Skillen's greenhouse, will come if they see the town has a vision for this. Because right now, we haven't shown that we have much of a vision. So this is my 5 minutes on the soapbox, and thank you for your time on this piece of it. Now we get to the fun stuff. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about this if you have any. And personally would invite you, if you want to come Tuesday night, to just kind of listen and see what people have to say about it. But I believe we're going in the right direction. This is a $7 million project, and let's not joke, that's a lot of money. 90% of this would be funded with federal and state funds. With the ARP funds and with the new money and stimulus money coming out of Washington DC, the DOT Commissioner and I have been talking for about 2 years about saying that if this money does land in Maine, we want to be part of something. Sanford has a $17 million project that's moving forward. Last night, the council approved this project to move forward to the TIF committee to work with the DOT to see if we could come back and see what a finished product would look like. Thousands of questions, everything from how big is my tractor trailer truck gonna fit through here? How am I gonna get over a curb? What happens if, and who does what? There's a lot more details to be worked out, and that will all come over the next year or so. On a fast track, I'd love to see this started in some way by the end of next summer, the summer of '23. That's pretty aggressive, but as I said a lot of times, and I'll wear out the cliche, if you rest, you rust. So we've got to move. We are really excited about this, and I really think it can happen here. And this is one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. When you have the right people at the table and they're willing to work with you, this isn't going to come along every other year for the town of Cumberland. So while we have a captive audience and while we have great support at the Department of Transportation, I'd really like to see it happen for us.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it myself. I was really skeptical when the one in Falmouth went in, but it works fantastic. If I remember right, though, they did have to alter it early after they finished it, like.
The water
Yeah,
district had a
'cause
broken water main.
They broke a water main the first time.
It wasn't like the diameter in the middle? No, just a water main? Okay.
No, it was a water main, and then the town, they got into it, and they that repaved the whole thing. So if you didn't go through it after 6 months after it and cry like I did, I go, really? Now? So, yeah, that's too bad. So now for the exciting part of your meeting, the capital improvement plan. And I will share with you that this is no easy process. Every planning board that has this in the town's charter about making a recommendation really and truly struggles with this, because honestly, it's like, do I tell you what street do I pave? Do you pick out which dump truck we're gonna get? Do you make those type of recommendations? Personally, I would think about projects that you haven't seen in your 67-page packet and, or listed anywhere, and make recommendations to other thoughts. If you want to see more into, sidewalk and bike lanes that weren't, in this plan, or if there were parks and playgrounds that you think might be a higher priority in our community. All of those things are totally on the table, and that's kind of where I would think the planning board would want to go versus deciding on, if we're going to put a ½ inch of pavement down versus 3/4 of an inch. I mean, those are technical decisions that really, take the air out of the room pretty quickly if you have to go through this page by page. Not that I wouldn't want you to go through the page by page, but it's a lot. It's a lot to digest. It's a lot for us to go through. I will share with you what we've done a lot of in the last few years, especially since Helene, our finance director, has come on board. She came from a Florida school district of a gazillion people, and she was really big into capital planning, and she's working really hard on our capital plan itself. We've looked at a lot of our department needs, from the fire to the police to the public works, and tried to separate those out so that we're adequately funding enough monies in each of those departments. So these monies, you'll see reserve after them. Every year on July 1st, they get transferred into reserve account, and then the money is aggregated over time so that, we may put this much money away in one of these, like, for instance, the police department reserves. That $22,000 gets added, and if there's a $40,000 item, it may take 2 years to fund that before that gets purchased. So the money doesn't go away, it just stays in a reserve account and continues to build over time. Fire vehicles and police vehicle reserves are the same way. We look at all the vehicles we have, we look at the budgets, and we say, okay, what do we really need to budget each year to achieve those improvements? And this is what we work on in the budget process every year with the town council. The project list that follows, it's usually not so much this grouping, but when you get into the sheets, when you get into these sheets, it's really where they can fit best in a budget. They'll either fit together in a bond that we typically go out every 5 to 7 years for major capital projects, or federal funds that come down, or state funds that come available. And Carla and I have gone through this list, and honestly, over the last couple decades, we've been very successful in achieving a lot of those projects. So and I always use Twin Brook as the example. The shelter building, the maintenance facility, and the last athletic field we built all came out of the CIP. All became because we had to put it in every year. Everybody thought it was not going to happen, and then there was a time when it could happen, and we were able to fund it. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or happy to take any feedback from you to say, you know, what I saw just flipping through these is this, and I kind of would like to focus on maybe some more of these type of projects in the future.
Question.
Peter?
So, Bill, on a strategic basis, the thing that probably bounces back on the planning board more than anything else would be the expansion of any sewer and water line, because that's really got a direct proportion of the size of the project and what can be done. So, and of course, these are big dollar ones, and I know we've talked, you're getting a lot of pressure from, you know, the Bruce Hill neighborhood, and also expansion of sewer. So what are your thoughts on that in the big picture?
Sewer is easy. No immediate plans, and those are typically driven by growth for the most part. So if a subdivision is looking to get put in that's close by sewer, they'll usually extend the sewer lines at their cost. And we haven't had any plans since we really did the Main Street work last few years, where we expanded the sewer lines down Main Street. The water line's a little different. Probably 20 years ago, about 20% of our town was serviced by Portland Water District, and now we're closer to 55, 60%. So when I look at the expansion of water, I'm not looking so much for the in-home service. I'm looking for fire protection. And fire protection is a big driver, and the more water lines we have, the better fire protection we have as a community. The Bruce Hill Road project is a good project and a good example. There's about 160 homes in that area. That's a fairly expensive project, somewhere in that $5 to $6 million range. It's probably would be on deck to be a capital project in the next round of funding down the road, but we're just finishing the public works piece, and we've got the schools on the horizon, so it's probably going to be closer to 7 years before we're ready for another major project. I would tell you, though, I think it's important to be ready, and we will look at doing something in that neighborhood, perhaps preparing I would say the 50 to 60% drawings. For instance, we want to check what the water quality of the wells are out there now, how much ledge is out there now, and all of that stuff is valuable and can be used in the future for, one, benchmarking, and two, for cost estimation. Construction costs have been insane. The last road that Carla and I looked at 2 years ago, road costs were somewhere around $500 to $600 a foot for a subdivision type road with all the utilities. The last one we saw just a few weeks ago was almost $1,100 a foot. So the costs are just crippling, and to be honest with you, for construction and for growth. So we have to be careful when these projects go out to bid. Now is not a great time to do that if we can help it. That project on Bruce Hill is important to the community, is important to me, is important to the town. We'll be applying for county ARP funds. That is a very competitive process. They had $42 million. They let out about $6 million this round, mostly social service type projects. I think the next round we'll see more capital projects. So we'll take advantage of that, Pete, when those things come with advantage. And if the state and feds put out more of these type of projects, we'll put that together as well. In the CIP, there's also a comprehensive water study that divides the town into 8 different neighborhoods. And we put a ballpark price tag on that. It's about a $72 million endeavor to basically run water lines everywhere in our community. That's that's the back of a napkin, how many feet of, roads do we have, and how many hydrants we need, and all that stuff, and that gets us pretty close. But, it's not 700,000, and it's probably less than 72 million, but it's not 5 million. So it's really for a magnitude of scale. And we'll be looking at that too. Why I want to push the Bruce Hill project is because that gives us a good footprint of how to move forward with a comprehensive water study for the rest of the community. So that's the long and the short answer. Sewer's a little trickier for everybody here. We own about 50%, I'm trying to think now. We own a portion of the Falmouth treatment plant. It's about 30%. We're at about 50% of that capacity right now. So we still have additional capacity for sewer. The big issue with the sewer system is that when we put it in here as a community, we kind of hopscotched around town and basically just put it in areas that had poor soils. And where it had the sandy or gravelly soils, we skipped over those neighborhoods and even skipped over sections of Main Street, for instance. That's not a very efficient way to kind of build infrastructure. So we're kind of paying for sins of the past a little bit right now. So moving forward, we're going to have to consider how much infill we still have potential for, because a lot of homes were skipped or didn't connect to sewer or didn't have to connect to sewer. So we have that, which is probably 10 or 15% of that capacity. And then we have to figure out who's going to pay for that extension, because right now the sewer system is an enterprise fund, and an enterprise fund is basically paid by the users. The town does not contribute tax dollars to that. We contribute just like you or I, if we are on the sewer system, do as a homeowner based on usage. So that's a little tricky, and it gets expensive because we basically plucked all the low-hanging fruit, and the hard stuff is in front of us.
Paul?
Yeah, Bill, yep, the oil prices aren't going to help asphalt prices.
No, they're not.
Are school buses part of the, just the school monies, or do they
Yes.
fall under, so it would not be anything to do with the capital, okay. Because I have to mention this, a few years ago, I remember we had community meetings regarding the garage, the maintenance, and people complained just walking by when buses were warming up, the fumes just overwhelmed them. And of course, in the spring and fall, some of the windows are open on the buses. After that event, we had a little, I don't know, committee or something, and then the pandemic started. But I found a number of articles relating asthma and other diseases that children develop related to diesel fume exposure. So hopefully somebody, Jason and others, are someday, it'd be great to have a electric bus, at least one or two, put on somebody's budget.
It's been mentioned.
Yeah,
Yes,
good.
electric buses, yes. Other comments? I had a few comments. I thought that document is fantastic. Anybody that wants to see where our town is headed, if you read through that whole thing, that's a lot. I had a question on road paving, and the initial table at the top, there's nothing under fiscal year 22 and 23, but further down in the pages, it looked like we are continuing to pave. Is that table's just not accurate?
There, in the budgets on the top, there should be a summer of 22 paving schedule. Most of our paving this summer is on the Force side. That is again contingent upon what we hope to get for paving prices. Our contractor believes they will come down sometime this summer, and we're hopeful that we can stay on schedule. I'm just trying to see if I can find that for you.
Yeah, the top.
It's there, but-
Page 3, at the top, just.
Jason, on one of the first ones, it's a note road paving to be funded with TIF and ARPA funds
Okay, gotcha.
for a total of 1.1 million in 20,
Okay.
where is that?
Yeah, I did see that we were continuing to pave, that's good. Other thoughts I had, I'm fully in favor of a sidewalk that keeps going in both directions, Tuttle and Blanchard. I realize at Blanchard we have, I guess what's called a byway, which they call a sidewalk, but to me, that's not a real sidewalk. I'd love to see that to be a real sidewalk, take some of that width and make a proper raised sidewalk on one side. And the Bruce Hill project, if we're gonna run water, I was kind of bummed when we ran water down Blanchard a few years ago, and we had that all opened up. I would think next time we have any roads open like that, that we'd put fiber in those same areas if possible. Is that possible?
Yes. What we have heard back from the county and from the state is don't use any local money on fiber. There's a lot of money coming out of Washington DC, so use your money on other things. So we'll definitely put that on the list. We have set aside money initially in the ARP funding for improved fiber optics in our community, and there are vendors in our area already laying fiber in surrounding communities. So I'm hoping that continues.
Okay. And I think I know the answer to this, but the Twin Brook Playground, that one, would that be part of this?
It's not funded in this year's, but yes, that would be part of a CIP initiative, and we would put I think there was at one time a sheet in there for a playground at Twin Brook.
Okay. That's all I had. Other comments?
I'm ready for a motion. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had I'll make a comment. I agree. I would love to see the sidewalk go out Blanchard. Because it's a lovely way to walk into town, and it's pretty dangerous most of the time. Okay, on the presentation, when you get towards the back, before you get to completed projects, I ran into a bunch of pages, where I thought it had already been completed. For instance, on page, I guess it's 49, Town of Cumberland, let me see. Tuttle Road Sidewalk Project to the Twin Brook Facility. It mentions that. And isn't that done?
That is done.
Yeah, and then I think the next one, I had a big question mark. The paving overlay. I was thinking, am I crazy? Main Street, Tuttle to Greeley Road. Wasn't some of that done last summer?
Kind of, but not entirely. We're dealing with a bunch of safety improvements on Main Street, Tuttle and Blanchard, which will continue sidewalks. We're hoping to get to Sunnyfield in the next project, and we're working with the state right now. We have about $600,000 committed for this project, which would, last summer's overlay on Main Street was about, I don't know, maybe half an inch of mix, which is really not, it's really kind of to hold it together. This would be, once we've got the crosswalks fixed, the truncated domes in place, the flashing lights up at the right spots, all of those crosswalks aligned properly, then we would overlay the road and put its final coat on. For those of you who've been here long enough, it's been probably close to 25 years since the last time Main Street was paved. And that paving that they did was really kind of just a leveling course more than
So
anything.
something happened, but it wasn't.
Wasn't
enough.
final.
It wasn't enough. Okay, and then we come to the Public Works Garage relocation.
Mhm.
Now, I guess well, we did quite a bit with the Public Works Garage, didn't we?
We didn't finish it.
We didn't finish
The training admin building, that was going to be the building that was out front, that was going to be the public entrance, and the school bus offices were going to be there, our offices, our training room was going to be there, the locker room and bathrooms. That piece had to get cut out because of the pricing of the construction that came in last year and the year before.
Okay, but we're still looking at that, because it looks like a good
It's in
idea.
front of the council right now to finish that, and that would be part of this next budget approval process if it's approved.
Okay,
But that's not the relocation.
No,
We're
no,
not
no, the
re- it's just-
relocation is,
it's dead and
we're
gone.
going nowhere, that's
Right.
kind of dead, and we've relocated and we're home again, so.
so that isn't a project then?
It's not finished, so
I think it got morphed into rehab of the current location, not a relocation.
Gotcha. Okay, so I got you. I understand. Okay. Let me see. Water line extension to Valhalla Road, was that?
That hasn't been done.
Hasn't.
No, that building is not sprinkled, and at some time in the future, it'll have to be sprinkled.
Okay. And then water tank installation on Bruce Hill Road?
Very good. That's, man, you are a civil engineer. I really appreciate you paying attention to this. That is still a project in the works. We're working with the Portland Water District right now, trying to get a tank built in Wyndham that would service Gorham, Wyndham, and Cumberland at the same time. If that is successful, that water tank on the top of Blueberry Hill wouldn't need to be installed. So we don't know yet, and we probably won't know until this fall if that's even, if that will get funded.
Okay. And then, let me see, sidewalk connection, and I guess I'm a little confused, Drown Road and Main Street.
That's done.
That's done, okay, yeah. There's a little piece, I think, that's not quite done there.
Where?
When you come to the edge of.
Oh, the
end of
very
that
end
park.
of Drown Road, yeah. It's about a 30-foot wide shoulder, but that's okay.
It's all right, it's all right.
okay. It
Yeah,
works.
it's really all right, yeah. Okay, I think that was it. Well, wait a minute. Trail upgrade Greeley Road, is that in there twice, or at Twin Brook?
They haven't been completed yet. We put the bridge across, if you remember at one time, that there was a bridge that went across of the box culvert.
Yes.
Wetlands have been delineated, but we still have some trail improvements on that side.
Okay, okay. And, I still have another question mark. Twin Brook Storage Building.
That'll probably have to come back before you again, because about, I don't know, must be close to 10 years now, that was approved. We were gonna build another addition to the storage facility down there when we knocked down the salt shed and had to relocate a bunch of stuff, and it's never been built.
It hasn't, okay. Okay. Oops, excuse me. Oh. Updated heating system maintenance building at Valhalla, so that hasn't been done.
That has not been done,
Okay.
no.
And public service, maintenance building addition at Valhalla?
That has not been done.
Okay. Or, nor the shelter, okay.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing for anybody that would like to speak. And seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Further discussion, Peter?
I would move that we endorse the proposed capital improvement plan for the fiscal years 2022 to 2027.
Second?
Thank you, Paul. Further discussion?
I just had, can I ask one
Yep.
question as the new person?
Sure.
The Tuttle Road Bridge overpass, over Route 1 there, who's responsible for that?
The Department of Transportation.
that's what I was thinking.
Scheduled to happen in 2 more years.
Okay, can't come soon enough.
Very difficult for our fire department. Our plow trucks are 1,800 pounds underweight, so we can travel over the bridges fully loaded. We weighed out, and just to make sure we weren't in violation, but our fire trucks are overweight, so.
Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? All opposed? Unanimous? Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, G4, report on growth permits issued per the Growth Management Ordinance, Chapter 118-9, as presented by Town Manager Bill Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We were here last year before you with a similar recommendation as to no change to our growth ordinance. Put before you on the screen a chart of where we have been. We've been averaging about 34 permits a year and about 6 exempt permits a year. And the exempt permits are defined by our ordinance, and it's mostly senior housing or in contract zone agreements that were agreed to by the town council with developers. So that's where the majority of those exemptions have occurred. The interesting thing over the last 20 years is to look at, where we have fallen with our neighbors as far as percent growth. Cumberland has had the highest percentage of growth in Cumberland County in the last 10 years, not the total number, but the highest percentage over where we started in 2010. We were at about 17.5%. The interesting thing is North Yarmouth is, even though it's a smaller community, they too had about 14.22% growth. So as you can see, we are still a very highly desirable community, and we continue to be because, primarily of our school system and the community here itself. I mean, we have a lot to offer with about 1,000 acres of open space. We have some beautiful parks. We have some beautiful trail systems. They're well-maintained, very user-friendly, and we're very proud of what we have maintained on the public side of the equation, as well as what our schools have accomplished with the national recognition they've received as well. The interesting thing about our growth in the last 3 years, I asked the assessor if he could give me a breakdown of, where housing sales have gone as well, because I think many folks were sitting on their properties and weren't going to sell after, we kind of went through the Great Recession. And when we came out of that toward the end of the last decade, people really started turning over their homes. We have seen a turnover of 542 homes in our community in the last 3 years. That's about 17% of our total number of residents. So when we look at the impacts on a school system and, people starting to basically throw out that Facebook factual, not factual information, it's not factual. It's really inaccurate when people basically say, it's the houses, it's the houses. It's not the houses in Cumberland, because honestly, we have been very consistent with our growth. It's almost just straight line, 35 to 40 a year for the last 3-4 decades. What we're seeing, though, is turnover in housing, and if you have a crystal ball that can give me a good prediction for that, that would really be helpful. But that turnover in housing is what is driving the bus on the numbers at the school, and it's not the number of houses we're building today. That turnover of housing is bringing more families to the community, and I don't know how anyone can predict that. The housing growth we have seen, Ocean View is going gangbusters across the street, but that's all 55 plus. They're already starting into phase 2, and we're excited that they are. Things are going well over there. Sales are strong, but you can all attest how many subdivisions have we've approved in the last 2 years. I can count them on probably one hand, and they haven't been big subdivisions. They haven't been 50, 60 units. They've been 10 units here, maybe 20 units here. And when I look at the houses being built in these subdivisions, they're not exactly starter homes for families. They're really very nice homes, but you're not your young family starting out in the community. So I really think our growth management ordinance is working. I don't know what tool we could ever implement to deal with turnover. I just don't know how that would work, but that's where our real growth in the number of children and our population is coming from. Carla and I have been working with the state to try to get our census numbers. I don't know why this is such a big secret. They come out, but they come out in massive amounts of volume of pages, so it's really difficult to navigate through them. So the state basically schedules times with us to meet and discuss where the most valuable information is to our community. And that is in, how long people have lived here, number of people per household, number of children, children under, 5 and 6 years old, so we can see what's coming next. I mean, a lot of information we don't have today that we basically beg, steal, and borrow from GPCOG, but we'd like to have it all in one place, and we'd like to have it all in a Cumberland format, if you will. So we're still working on that, and once we do have that, we'll report back to you some of the interesting statistics. So By ordinance, we're required to be here no less than once every 3 years. Last year, we were requested to come back again this year, which is fine. Happy to do it every year. We can do this as like a daily double. We'll do the CIP, and then we'll jump right into the growth, because it's not difficult to do, and it's the numbers we track all the time. So I think it's helpful, and I think it's a good conversation for the board to have. I hate to have it at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night sometimes we do this, so I'm glad it's closer to 9 tonight. But happy to answer any questions I can about the growth ordinance with you, but staff is not recommending any changes, but any other recommendation that you want to send to the council is totally up to the board.
Thank you, Bill. Comments, Peter?
I just would, again, for everybody out there, I would recommend everybody in town, it's on the town website, it's on our agenda with the detail. I think these 21 pages, which include a lot of the COG report, should be mandatory reading for every citizen in Cumberland before they start whining about schools doing these platitudes of the 12-year wonders and God knows what other things that are flying around on Facebook, TikTok, and all those other nutty things that are out there. But there is good data. Instead of people flapping their jaws, I mean, there is solid information as to where we are, where we were, where we're going, and it'll allow people in the future, when they show up to public meetings and school budget hearings and everything, to be able to make some intelligent comments based on real data. And I compliment you, Bill. This is just really dynamite stuff that's giving us a direction where we're going. And when we're done, I'll make a motion to endorse the town manager's recommendation.
Well, I'll just share, it's your chairs who pushed a lot of this, and Jason and I have talked about this probably at length for a couple of times, and I think too, anybody that has seen this memo from GP Cog that was produced, and then even the Lawton report as well, can see that it's factual, it's real, it's what's happening, it's turnover in housing that's really driving what we're seeing today. And Jason, thanks for pushing that, because I think, we as staff get a little too close to the data sometimes, so we just take it as, second nature. But I think we gotta keep telling the story, because that's important.
It is a very good report. It's enlightening. I think it should be required reading. Being on this board, and then on, of course, the other side, the school board, it is interesting how people point fingers. They just don't understand where it's coming from, so the report is very helpful. A couple of comments. I'm in favor, to the degree possible, that we continue to do impact fees, maintain minimum lot size. I think it is one of the few tangible things that you can do to try to manage growth. Senior abatements, to try to help the people that made this town wonderful and what it is, help them try to be able to stay here. So to the degree possible, that's huge to me. And then if people really, I joke about this, really want their town to stop growing, you can make it undesirable. But we're a victim of our own success, and I think the secret is out that Maine and southern Maine is a wonderful place to be, and we've seen that last few years. So I've come full circle, and I don't think that we can limit growth. We can just manage growth and try to provide what we can for all the people coming here.
Good question. Bill, just one question. How much undeveloped land is left in Cumberland, roughly?
There's quite a bit. What's interesting is the ordinance, the conservation ordinance that we passed, that's 75% of our land area left, honestly didn't prevent the number of homes being built, just the number of acreages. So half that acreage that's in 80% of our land will be preserved going forward in the future, which is huge. But still, those landowners aren't going to be penalized. They'll be able to sell their property with the same number of houses on it that was allowable before. And I think that was a huge, huge win for our community. Acreage-wise, Paul, this is going to scare you. We can triple our population with the acreage we have
Okay,
left.
I'd heard you talk about that before, I was just curious.
Yeah, not
to-
that
to
we
be
want to triple our
reminded.
population,
Right,
but
yeah,
we
thank
can
you.
triple our population.
Carla, where does it stand and how would it affect us, the thing that's moving through the State House in regards to allowing 4 dwelling units in any single-family residential zoned lot?
So the accessory dwelling unit thing we're already doing.
Well, no, but I mean, but that's
But
completely
then there's
different.
additional density increases that Bill might know more, talking with Steve Moriarty. I don't know.
Yeah, we're in a really bad, we're in the crosshairs. The Gold Coast, as they like to call us in Augusta, is basically in the crosshairs for exclusionary zoning. And exclusionary zoning is zoning that's 4 acres, 3 acres, 2 acres in size. That's what they look at. They would like to see us be down to less than a quarter acre size. They'd like to see us down to 10,000 square foot lots, but they kind of contradict themselves because it's in conflict with the state plumbing code. You can't build on a lot less than 20,000 square feet if you don't have sewer. So you can't ask for 10,000 square feet for everybody and not have sewer for everybody. So it's, Maine Municipal is fighting this very hard. I talk with Kate DeFore pretty regularly about this. She does not believe it'll go forward. Many of us are kind of lukewarm on this because we understand why this isn't for. This is just, we've priced ourselves out of homes. We can't afford our own homes anymore, and we can't afford to, affordable housing is like an oxymoron here in Cumberland. It's just impossible, and I don't know how we do that unless it's on town-owned land and it's got some kind of special tax structure that the state doesn't allow us to do right now. So there's a whole bunch of issues that are beyond our land use ordinance that the state has got to address and still has to have a real serious conversation. I think they're frustrated. I think Portland has basically stopped growing because of their punitive ordinances toward development. We are going to start seeing more and more development being pushed out to our area and further north. So until the legislature tells us that we have to do differently, the community has sounded off twice that they like our lot sizes just as the way they are. So we're not proposing that. I'm a quarter acre lot guy, so there's no hidden agenda on my part. I died on that hill twice, and I'm not going to die again. But we are, the people in this town have said they like the town the way it is, and they want to keep growing it this way.
But doesn't that I haven't really seen it, but doesn't that legislation basically say if you own a house lot, you don't have to go, you'd probably have to go to get a building permit, but it's not rezoning, it's not selling, it's not breaking, it's not subdividing your lot, you can add
Do whatever
three
you want,
more,
essentially.
you can add 3 more dwelling units on your single family.
It throws zoning out the window, essentially.
And can the state do that? Can the state,
We think
does
cooler-
that push down, does the town have to agree to that if?
Well, we are a creature of the state, so if the state says thou shalt, we don't have a lot of choice. We can fight back, which obviously every town will. What I've heard, though, from our representatives at Maine Municipal, they don't believe the legislation is going to be successful the way it's been presented. They really feel there's just too many odd things that just don't fit for most of Maine. They may fit in Portland or South Portland, but they're not going to fit in Cumberland. They're certainly not going to fit in Caribou or most of Aroostook County, and they're trying to pass a one-size-fits-all model that just doesn't work for Maine, and it doesn't work for southern Maine any more than it doesn't work for northern Maine. So there's still a lot of work to do, and I think the frustration just became evident from the legislature that the town's lacking the ability to be successful in any type of affordable housing plan is where this kind of started. And I don't think it's going to end. I think there's still going to be a lot more conversations. I think we're going to be seeing potentially some changes in zoning languages, but that's not going to happen in this session. I just think there's still too much work to be done in too little time.
Okay, thanks. And Peter, we don't need a motion,
Yes, I think it's in there, isn't it?
not a recommendation.
Oh, thank you.
No problem.
Well, that's good. As one who died on the 2 to 4 acre minimum hill, I've surrendered, although my wife keeps berating me profusely, but I still think we should have gone to 2 acres throughout the town, but the good folks at Range Road threw enough stink bombs in there to prevent it, so end of story.
Thank you, Bill. I'll personally be very anxious to see the new GPCOG report as soon as we have population numbers and we can put that together. It's going to be exciting and see if it's changed at all. It's a really good report. Okay, so moving on to H, administrative matters. I had asked to put on the agenda last time, item 1, discussion on reciting the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of meetings. So this isn't, I didn't want to make a big deal out of this. This isn't, I had at least one person read way into it, and it's not that sort of thing. I personally have been sort of frustrated and also fascinated in recent years about the division in our town, how we have so many smart people that can fight so profusely when both sides would say that they agree on the same goal, but different paths to get there. So I find that fascinating. So I asked to have a discussion on this, basically just because I think that the Pledge of Allegiance to me is just acknowledging that we might not be perfect, but our country and our society is probably the best that's ever been in the history of mankind, and it's probably worth keeping and trying to make better rather than throw out and start over. So to me, it's just kind of a willingness to adopt that mentality that we should keep improving what we have. So I'm happy to hear other comments, whether this is not a good thing to do or whatever. Anybody?
I'm going to say no. I think that we serve at the pleasure of the town council, and we are an apolitical board that does judicial work, and any governance, any changes in the way we conduct our business should come from the town council. And I also feel that most recently, the Pledge of Allegiance has been politicized and weaponized at the school board level, and folks have been called out as either for or against it, and I think that that's inappropriate, and I don't want to see that coming into the planning board.
Okay.
I agree. I think we're a more inclusive group if we decide not to say it.
Yeah, I'm sort of neutral on the issue in terms of us doing it. Some people object because it's under God has to be mentioned, so then it becomes to them a religious pledge, which I disagree with, but I don't think it has a lot to do with the beginning of our meeting, but I am neutral on, not for or against it. I'm certainly for America.
Well, we are all part of that group. Yes, that's the group that I think ought to be top of the list.
I think
Peter?
Well, speaking as a kind of a veteran of the school board pledge wars, and also as a Vietnam veteran, that I think you made a very, very good point that we're a quasi-judicial board, and I'm just not comfortable. I agree. I'm not comfortable as a quasi-judicial board that we do it, and I'm sure I will be front and center on Mr. Doyle's page and have my likeness spread around town as it has for the last 12 months, but it's just, I'm not comfortable with it, but I'm happy to say it and any other surroundings, I guess.
Ann?
Yeah, okay, I'm with Lorraine and Peter there, and Bridget. Yes. I think saying the pledge is a big deal. I think it's a loyalty oath, and I don't think it's appropriate for us to do that. I think it's problematic and with its wording, and that it might then discourage some persons from wanting to serve on our planning board. For instance, an atheist. I am fine with atheists, but they might be uncomfortable. People of color. There are disagreements with some of the wording by people of color, and I don't think we want to discourage people of color from being on our board. So I don't think we should do that.
I guess I'll say something, since I'm the only one who hasn't as of yet, but I'm really sort of agnostic on this whole subject, but hearing the number of people that are against it, I don't really feel like putting them in a position that they're uncomfortable with, so I would vote no.
Interesting. I realize it's a deep thing. I didn't want to get that deep into it. It's very, very just surface level to me is a patriotism thing, but I understand everybody's point of view. So there you have it. So I will take a motion for item I.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? All opposed? Unanimous.
All right. Very good, Jason. Good job.
Nice meeting you too. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Fun, huh?